Can you trust the process when the process gives you no proof? Not some proof, not a small sign, not a little reassurance. No proof, nothing, no visible progress, no breakthrough, no confirmation, no evidence that your effort is producing anything at all. Can you still keep going? Because that question reveals more about a person than talent ever will. Most people believe they have faith. Most people believe they trust the process. Most people believe they are committed until reality becomes silent. Then everything changes because it's easy to trust when life keeps rewarding you. It's easy to stay motivated when results are arriving on schedule. It's easy to feel aligned when everything appears to be working. The real test begins when reality stops responding, when weeks turn into months, when months turn into years, when you continue showing up and nothing seems different. That's where most people walk away. Not because they're weak, not because they're incapable, because they mistake invisibility for failure. And this mistake costs people their dreams every single day. Think about how many people quit something that was actually working. Think about that. How many businesses were abandoned one step before momentum arrived? How many books were never finished because the author saw no evidence anyone would read them? How many relationships ended because growth wasn't happening fast enough? How many visions died because reality refused to provide immediate proof? More than anyone realizes, because human beings have a deep psychological need for certainty. We want confirmation, we want reassurance, we want guarantees. We want to know that if we invest effort, life will reward us. But life doesn't operate that way, and neither does growth. In fact, some of the most important transformations you'll ever experience happen entirely beyond your awareness, long before they become visible, long before they become measurable, long before anyone, including you, can see them. Look at nature. A seed enters the ground. Then something strange happens. Nothing. At least that's how it appears. Days pass, weeks pass, sometimes longer. The surface remains unchanged. No applause, no recognition, no evidence. If someone judged the process from the outside, they might conclude nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, an invisible world is being constructed. Roots are expanding, systems are forming, structures are developing. The future tree is being built long before the first leaf appears. The visible result is not the beginning of growth. It is the announcement that growth has already occurred. And the same principle applies to your life. The problem is that most people are obsessed with leaves. They want visible proof. They want immediate signs. They want evidence. But reality often builds roots first, and roots are invisible. The greatest mistake people make is abandoning the process while the roots are still growing, because invisible progress feels like no progress. And that's where patience becomes misunderstood. Most people think patience means waiting. It doesn't. Waiting is passive. Patience is active. Waiting says, I'll sit here until something happens. Patience says, I'll continue moving regardless of whether something happens today. Those are completely different states. One is dependence, the other is trust. One requires proof, the other requires conviction. And conviction is becoming increasingly rare in modern life because we live in a culture addicted to immediacy. Everything arrives instantly. Information, entertainment, communication, food, validation. People have trained themselves to expect immediate responses from reality. And when reality operates on a different timeline, frustration appears. Suddenly they believe something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Reality simply isn't operating according to their preferred schedule. Now here's something most people never consider. What if the delay is not about the goal? What if the delay is about you? What if the thing you're waiting for is already available, but you're still becoming the person capable of sustaining it? Think about that, because everyone wants results, but very few people ask a more important question. Am I prepared for the result I'm asking for? People ask for success, but success amplifies who you already are. People ask for wealth, but wealth magnifies your habits. People ask for influence, but influence exposes your character. People ask for opportunities, but opportunities demand responsibility. So what if the waiting period is not punishment? What if it's preparation? What if life is not withholding your future? What if it's building the version of you capable of handling it? That changes everything, because now the delay becomes meaningful. Now the silence becomes productive. Now the waiting becomes transformation. And this is where most people lose perspective. They think the goal is the reward. It isn't. The person you become while pursuing the goal is the reward. The goal is simply evidence of who you've become. But we reverse the order. We become obsessed with outcomes and we ignore identity. We chase results and neglect transformation. We focus on arrival and overlook evolution. Yet evolution is where the real power exists, because once identity changes, results become inevitable. Let's go deeper. Psychologically, patience is one of the most powerful forms of emotional regulation. Why? Because patience forces you to exist comfortably within uncertainty. And uncertainty is where most people struggle. Human beings naturally seek closure. We want answers. We want conclusions. We want certainty. The brain loves prediction. It wants to know what's coming next. It wants to eliminate ambiguity. When ambiguity remains, discomfort appears. This discomfort creates anxiety. Anxiety creates urgency. Urgency creates poor decisions. And poor decisions destroy progress. This is why people sabotage themselves. Not because they're incapable, because uncertainty becomes unbearable, so they act prematurely. They quit too early. They change direction too often. They abandon processes that simply required more time. Not because the process failed, because their tolerance for uncertainty failed. And that's a critical distinction. The strongest people are not necessarily the smartest. The strongest people are not necessarily the most talented. The strongest people are often the individuals who can tolerate uncertainty longer than everyone else, because they understand something profound. The future is built in invisible seasons. Think about every major transformation in your life. The most important changes probably didn't happen overnight. They happened gradually, quietly, incrementally, until one day you looked back and realized everything was different. That's how transformation works. It rarely announces itself while it's happening. Growth is often silent, and silence confuses people, because silence feels empty. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is construction. Silence is development. Silence is preparation. Silence is reality doing its most important work. Now let's move beyond psychology and enter something deeper. Let's talk about faith. Not religious faith, not borrowed faith, not performative faith, real faith, the kind that exists when there is no evidence, the kind that remains when logic cannot provide reassurance, because anyone can believe after they see. Anyone. No courage is required for that. The challenge is believing before you see. The challenge is remaining committed before reality agrees with you. The challenge is continuing to build while standing inside uncertainty. That's faith. And faith is not blindness. Faith is trust in a process you cannot fully observe. Think about how often life has worked that way. You didn't know how certain experiences would unfold. You didn't know how certain opportunities would arrive. You didn't know how certain connections would happen, yet somehow they did. Not always on your timeline, not always according to your expectations, but often in ways you couldn't have predicted, which means something important. The future is rarely visible from the present. And that's okay, because visibility is not required for movement. Clarity of direction matters more than clarity of outcome. You do not need to know every step. You only need enough certainty to take the next one. And that's where part one of this conversation leaves us. Because the greatest breakthroughs rarely begin with evidence. They begin with commitment. They begin with a decision. They begin with someone choosing to continue despite the absence of proof. Someone choosing trust over fear, movement over hesitation, conviction over doubt. The strongest people aren't the ones who receive signs quickly. They're the ones who remain faithful during invisible seasons. The ones who keep building when nobody is watching. The ones who keep believing when reality remains silent. The ones who understand that roots grow before trees appear. And perhaps that's where your greatest transformation is happening right now. Not where you can see it, not where others can measure it, but somewhere beneath the surface, quietly, patiently, powerfully, preparing for the moment when what is currently invisible becomes impossible to ignore. Then let me ask you something. What happens after disappointment? Not the disappointment itself. What happens after it? Because that's where the real story begins. Most people think failure destroys dreams. It doesn't. Disappointment does, and disappointment becomes dangerous when it repeats. You try, nothing happens. You try again, nothing happens. You invest time, nothing changes. You stay committed. Reality remains silent. Eventually, something begins to shift, not externally, internally. The mind starts asking different questions. Not, how can I improve? But, is this even worth it? Not, what can I learn? But, Why bother? This is the moment where many people unknowingly abandon their future, because every significant vision eventually enters a phase where effort and evidence become disconnected. You continue investing, yet the returns remain invisible. And the longer this phase lasts, the louder doubt becomes. Now understand something important. Doubt is not the enemy. Doubt is information. Doubt reveals where trust is weak. Doubt reveals where certainty depends on external proof. Doubt reveals the conditions attached to your commitment. Because many people say, "I'll keep going." What they really mean is, "I'll keep going as long as reality keeps encouraging me." That isn't commitment. That's a transaction. True commitment begins when encouragement disappears. Think about how most people approach goals. They feel motivated, they start moving, they experience early momentum. Everything feels exciting, the future feels close. Then something happens, progress slows. The novelty fades, the emotional excitement disappears. Now the process becomes ordinary, repetitive, predictable, sometimes boring. This is where the majority stop, because they were never committed to the process. They were committed to the feeling, and feelings are unstable. Feelings rise, feelings fall, feelings change, but principles remain. This is why discipline eventually becomes more important than motivation, because motivation asks, "Do I feel like doing it today?" Discipline asks, "Does it matter whether I feel like it?" Completely different conversation. One depends on emotion, the other depends on identity, and identity is everything. Let's go deeper. Most people underestimate how much their future is determined by their relationship with delayed gratification. Psychologists have studied this for decades. Human beings naturally prefer immediate rewards over future rewards. Given the choice between a small reward today and a larger reward later, many choose today. Not because they're irrational, because the future feels uncertain, the present feels real. The brain discounts future value. It prioritizes immediate certainty. This tendency affects everything: health, relationships, business, wealth, personal growth. People sacrifice extraordinary futures for ordinary comforts, not because they want less, because immediate relief feels more convincing than distant possibility. Now imagine reversing this pattern. Imagine becoming someone capable of investing effort today without demanding immediate returns. Imagine becoming emotionally comfortable with delayed outcomes. Imagine building the capacity to continue when rewards remain invisible. That changes everything, because suddenly you're playing a different game than most people. Most people need constant validation. You don't. Most people need reassurance. You don't. Most people need evidence. You don't. And this gives you an enormous advantage. Why? Because reality often rewards persistence long after others have stopped participating. Think about compound interest. At first, growth appears insignificant, tiny, almost disappointing. But eventually, something extraordinary happens. The curve changes, growth accelerates, results multiply. What appeared slow suddenly appears explosive. People call it overnight success. It wasn't overnight. The acceleration was simply invisible until it wasn't. And life operates similarly. Most breakthroughs are non-linear, meaning progress does not occur in a straight line. Effort accumulates, knowledge accumulates, skill accumulates, character accumulates, then one day the visible outcome appears. People see the outcome, they miss the accumulation. This misunderstanding creates frustration because people compare their current effort to someone else's visible result. They don't compare their effort to the years of invisible preparation that preceded that result, and that comparison creates impatience. Now let's talk about something deeper, the emotional experience of waiting, because waiting exposes parts of ourselves we usually avoid. When life becomes uncertain, hidden beliefs surface, questions emerge, fears emerge, insecurities emerge, old wounds emerge. The silence becomes a mirror. And many people dislike what they see, because while you're waiting for results, you're often being confronted by yourself, your fears, your attachments, your expectations, your need for control. This is why waiting feels uncomfortable. You're not just waiting for the future, you're encountering your present identity, and that encounter can be intense, because most people secretly believe, if I don't see results, maybe I'm failing. If nothing is happening, maybe I'm not enough. If progress isn't visible, maybe this isn't meant for me. Notice what happened. The absence of evidence became a judgment about self-worth. And that's dangerous, because now the process isn't just about achieving a goal, it's about proving value. The moment that happens, emotional suffering increases dramatically, because every delay feels personal, every obstacle feels personal, every setback feels personal. But growth is not personal. Growth is developmental. A seed isn't being punished when it's underground, it's developing. A tree isn't failing because it's growing slowly, it's developing. developing, and perhaps you're developing too. Perhaps what you're interpreting as delay is actually preparation. Perhaps what you're calling stagnation is actually construction. Perhaps what feels like nothing is actually everything. Let's move into philosophy. One of the greatest misunderstandings about life is the belief that outcomes determine meaning. Many people believe, I'll be happy when I arrive. I'll feel successful when I achieve it. I'll feel complete when it happens. But what if that's backwards? What if meaning is not found at the destination? What if meaning is created during the journey? Think about this. If every goal were instantly granted the moment you desired it, what would happen? Growth would disappear, patience would disappear, resilience would disappear, wisdom would disappear. The very qualities that make achievement meaningful would never develop, which means something fascinating. The waiting period is not separate from the reward. The waiting period is part of the reward because it creates the person capable of appreciating the outcome. Without patience, abundance becomes entitlement. Without resilience, success becomes fragile. Without wisdom, achievement becomes empty. The journey prepares consciousness for the destination. Now let's enter a spiritual perspective. Many people ask, why is it taking so long? Perhaps the better question is, what is this season trying to teach me? Because every season has a lesson. Some seasons teach action, some seasons teach courage, some seasons teach surrender, and some seasons teach trust. Trust is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth. People think trust means certainty. It doesn't. Trust exists precisely because certainty doesn't. If certainty existed, trust would be unnecessary. Trust becomes meaningful only when uncertainty is present. Think about that. The very condition you're trying to eliminate may be the condition required for growth. The uncertainty itself may be the classroom. The silence itself may be the teacher. The delay itself may be the training. Because trust is not proven when things are easy. Trust is proven when nothing appears to be working and you continue anyway. Now here's a powerful question. What if the universe is not testing your desire? What if it's testing your consistency? Anyone can desire something. Millions do. But how many remain committed after disappointment? How many continue after setbacks? How many stay aligned after months of silence? Very few. And that's why persistence is so powerful. Persistence filters. It separates temporary interest from genuine commitment. It separates fantasy from conviction. It separates wishful thinking from purpose. The longer the process continues, the more clarity emerges. Not about the goal, about you. You begin discovering who you really are. You begin discovering what truly matters. You begin discovering whether your commitment is conditional or unconditional. And those discoveries are priceless because eventually something extraordinary happens. You stop needing constant proof. You stop requiring reassurance. You stop demanding evidence. You become internally anchored. Now your confidence comes from commitment rather than outcomes. Your faith comes from experience rather than signs. Your strength comes from consistency rather than results. And this changes the entire experience. Because now you're no longer chasing validation from reality. You're participating in a process of becoming. And becoming is infinitely more powerful than achieving. Because achievement can be lost, identity remains, results can disappear, character remains, circumstances can change, wisdom remains. This is why the strongest people often appear calm during uncertain seasons. They've learned something others haven't. They've learned that visible progress is not the only form of progress. They've learned that silence is not failure. They've learned that unseen growth is still growth. Most importantly, they've learned that patience is not passive waiting. Patience is active trust. Trusting that what is being built beneath the surface will eventually emerge. Trusting that today's effort is shaping tomorrow's reality. Trusting that invisible seasons serve a purpose. Trusting that roots matter even when nobody sees them. And perhaps that's where you are right now, standing inside a season that offers very little evidence, a season where progress feels hidden, a season where doubt occasionally appears, a season where reality seems unusually quiet. If so, remember this: the absence of visible movement does not mean the absence of movement. The absence of proof does not mean the absence of progress. And the absence of signs does not mean the absence of transformation. Sometimes the most important work is happening where your eyes cannot reach. And often, by the time you finally see the result, the real miracle has already happened. Because the greatest transformation was never the outcome. The greatest transformation was the person you became while waiting for it. There is a moment that arrives in every meaningful journey, a moment nobody talks about, a moment that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, no crisis, no catastrophe, no visible collapse, yet internally everything changes. It's the moment where excitement disappears, the moment where certainty evaporates, the moment where the dream no longer feels close, and suddenly you find yourself standing between two versions of reality. One version says, keep going. The other says, what's the point? This is the invisible crossroads that determines more destinies than talent ever will. Because at this stage, information is no longer enough. Motivation is no longer enough. Positive thinking is no longer enough. Something deeper is required. Faith, not blind faith, not naive optimism, real faith. The kind that survives silence, the kind that survives uncertainty, the kind that survives the absence of evidence. And this is where most people misunderstand what faith actually is. Faith is not believing everything will happen exactly as you imagined. Faith is trusting that your effort still matters, even when you cannot yet see its effect. Think about that, because many people are not actually seeking results. They're seeking reassurance. They want life to continuously tell them, you're doing great. Keep going. You're on the right path. But life rarely works that way. Sometimes life becomes completely silent, not because you're lost, but because you're being invited into a deeper level of trust. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. At some point, someone lets go. You don't realize it immediately. You continue moving. Then suddenly you notice the support is gone. Now you must discover something. Can you trust your own balance? Can you trust your own movement? Can you trust what you've already developed? This is exactly what happens during invisible seasons. The external support disappears. The signs become fewer, the encouragement becomes quieter, and now you're invited to discover whether your commitment depends on evidence or conviction. This distinction changes everything because evidence is external, conviction is internal. Evidence comes and goes, conviction remains. Evidence depends on circumstances, conviction depends on identity. And eventually, every meaningful dream requires a transition from evidence-based belief to conviction-based belief. Now let's go deeper. Why does uncertainty feel so uncomfortable? Because uncertainty threatens the illusion of control. Human beings crave predictability. We want to know what's coming next. We want guarantees. We want certainty. We want outcomes before commitment. But life refuses to provide that. And perhaps that's intentional, because certainty creates comfort. Uncertainty creates growth. Think about your greatest periods of development. Were they comfortable? Probably not. Were they predictable? Probably not. Were they certain? Definitely not. Growth almost always lives inside uncertainty, because uncertainty forces expansion. It forces adaptation. It forces trust. It forces transformation. Now let's move into something even deeper. Many people believe they are waiting for their future, but often their future is waiting for them. Waiting for them to become someone different, waiting for them to develop the emotional capacity required for the next chapter, waiting for them to strengthen their character, waiting for them to outgrow old limitations. Because receiving is not just about opportunity, receiving is about readiness. Imagine giving $1 million to someone who lacks financial discipline. The money doesn't solve the problem, it amplifies it. Imagine giving massive influence to someone who lacks emotional stability. The influence doesn't solve the problem, it exposes it. Imagine receiving everything you've ever wanted before you've developed the wisdom to handle it. What appears to be a blessing can quickly become a burden, which means something profound. Sometimes the delay is protection, not punishment. Protection, not from failure, from premature success. Because success without preparation can be more destructive than failure itself. Most people never consider that possibility. They interpret every delay as rejection. But what if the delay is refinement? What if life is strengthening your foundation before increasing the weight placed upon it? A skyscraper cannot rise without a deep foundation. The taller the building, the deeper the foundation must become. Yet nobody celebrates the foundation. Nobody takes pictures of it. Nobody admires it. Everyone admires the visible structure. Few appreciate the invisible work that made it possible. And perhaps that's why patience is so rare. People want the visible outcome. They don't want the invisible preparation. But life insists on both. Now let's talk about spiritual maturity. One of the greatest signs of spiritual maturity is the ability to remain aligned during seasons of uncertainty. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because your relationship with uncertainty changes. The The immature mind asks, when will this happen? The mature mind asks, what is this season teaching me? The immature mind demands answers. The mature mind develops trust. The immature mind seeks control. The mature mind seeks alignment. This shift is subtle but powerful, because the moment you stop fighting uncertainty, uncertainty loses its power over you. Now you're no longer trapped in resistance. Now you're available for growth, and growth begins accelerating, not externally at first, internally, which is where all lasting transformation begins. Let's explore a philosophical perspective. Ancient philosophers often spoke about a concept many modern people struggle to understand: the idea that wisdom emerges through endurance. Not information, endurance. Because information can be learned quickly, wisdom cannot. Wisdom requires experience. Wisdom requires testing. Wisdom requires time. A person can read 100 books about patience. That does not make them patient. A person can listen to 1,000 hours of motivational content. That does not create resilience. Resilience is forged through experience. Patience is forged through waiting. Faith is forged through uncertainty. Wisdom is forged through endurance, and there are no shortcuts. This is why life's greatest lessons often arrive disguised as delays. The delay becomes the teacher. The uncertainty becomes the classroom. The silence becomes the curriculum, and the student is transformed. Now here's something fascinating. Most people assume that if they achieve their goal, their doubts will disappear. But that's rarely true, because doubt is not created by circumstances. Doubt is created by interpretation. If you cannot trust yourself during uncertainty, success won't magically fix that. The external world can change completely, while internal insecurity remains untouched. That's why inner work matters. That's why character matters. That's why identity matters. Because eventually, every external challenge becomes an internal challenge, and every external breakthrough becomes an internal breakthrough first. Now imagine two people facing the exact same situation. Both are pursuing a meaningful vision. Both experience delays. Both encounter uncertainty. Both see no immediate evidence. One person interprets the silence as failure. The other interprets the silence as preparation. Same circumstances, completely different experience. Why? Because meaning shapes reality, not reality itself. The story you tell yourself about the process determines how you experience the process. If the story is nothing is happening, you suffer. If the story is something is developing beneath the surface, you persist. The facts may be identical. The interpretation changes everything. This is why perspective is power. Perspective determines endurance. Perspective determines resilience. Perspective determines whether you quit or continue. And often, continuing is the difference. Not brilliance, not talent, not luck. Continuing. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of consistency. They assume extraordinary outcomes require extraordinary actions. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes extraordinary outcomes emerge from ordinary actions repeated consistently over long periods of time. But consistency only becomes possible when patience exists, and patience only becomes possible when trust exists, and trust only becomes possible when identity becomes stronger than circumstance. That's the progression. Identity, trust, patience, consistency, results. Most people reverse the order. They want results first, then they'll trust, then they'll be patient, then they'll stay consistent. Life doesn't work that way. Results often arrive last. Trust arrives first. Now let's move towards something deeply important. There will come a time when your commitment is tested, not challenged. Tested. A period where quitting appears reasonable. A period where abandoning the vision appears logical. A period where nobody would blame you for walking away. And that's precisely why the test matters. Because true commitment is revealed when quitting makes sense, not when continuing is easy. Anyone can persist when circumstances are favorable. The real question is, who are you when circumstances become difficult? Who are you when signs disappear? Who are you when evidence becomes scarce? Who are you when reality becomes quiet? Because that version of you determines the future, not the version that exists during comfort, not the version that exists during momentum, the version that exists during uncertainty. And here's the beautiful truth. Every time you choose trust over fear, every time you choose consistency over emotion, every time you choose commitment over comfort, you are becoming someone different, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more resilient, someone more aligned. And often, that's the real purpose of the journey, not merely to arrive somewhere, but to become someone. Because destinations eventually fade, achievements eventually normalize, goals eventually evolve, but who you become remains forever. And perhaps that's why patience is one of the most powerful spiritual disciplines in existence, because patience forces transformation. Patience forces trust. Patience forces surrender. Patience forces growth. Patience forces wisdom. And wisdom cannot be borrowed. It must be earned. One season at a time, one challenge at a time, one invisible day at a time. So if you're currently standing inside a season where evidence is scarce, if you're currently walking through a chapter where signs seem absent, if you're currently questioning whether anything is actually happening, remember this: the greatest transformations rarely announce themselves while they're occurring. The most important growth is often invisible. The deepest roots are always hidden, and the strongest foundations are built long before anyone notices the structure rising above them. You may not see it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. In fact, the very silence you're struggling with may be the evidence that something profound is being built beneath the surface. And one day, what feels invisible now will become undeniable. Eventually, every meaningful journey reaches a point where the question is no longer, will it happen? The question becomes, who am I becoming while it happens? And that changes everything, because most people spend years obsessing over outcomes. They obsess over timelines. They obsess over signs. They obsess over results. They obsess over arrival. Yet very few people stop long enough to ask whether they are evolving into the person capable of sustaining what they seek. Think about how often people imagine the destination, the successful business, the financial freedom, the dream relationship, the meaningful purpose, the fulfilled life. But almost nobody imagines the transformation required to carry those things. Everyone wants the harvest, few understand the becoming, and becoming is where the real work lives. Because the truth is this: life is not simply delivering outcomes. Life is shaping identity. Every challenge shapes identity. Every delay shapes identity. Every season of uncertainty shapes identity, and identity is the hidden force behind every result you will ever experience. Let's go deeper. Imagine two people standing in the exact same season. Both have a vision. Both are working hard. Both have experienced delays. Both have encountered uncertainty. Externally, their situations appear identical. Internally, they are worlds apart. The first person says, nothing is happening. The second person says, something is happening, even if I can't see it. The first person focuses on evidence. The second person focuses on alignment. The first person measures outcomes. The second person measures growth. And because of that difference, their futures diverge. One becomes discouraged. One becomes stronger. One becomes reactive. One becomes resilient. One eventually quits. One eventually breaks through. Not because reality treated them differently, because they interpreted reality differently. And interpretation is one of the most powerful forces in human existence. Your interpretation determines your emotional state. Your emotional state determines your behavior. Your behavior determines your results. That's the chain, and it begins with perspective. Now let's talk about something most people never realize. There are seasons in life where your primary responsibility is not achievement, it's preparation. That may be one of the hardest truths to accept, because preparation rarely feels productive. Preparation doesn't provide immediate rewards. Preparation doesn't create applause. Preparation often feels invisible, yet almost every extraordinary outcome is preceded by extraordinary preparation. Athletes understand this. Musicians understand this. Writers understand this. Master craftsmen understand this. Years of invisible effort eventually produce visible excellence. But the excellence is never the beginning of the story. It's the consequence of everything that happened beforehand. And your life is no different. There may be things happening inside you right now that are more important than the outcome you're pursuing. Patience, discipline, self-trust, emotional stability, character, wisdom, conviction. These things are difficult to measure, but they determine everything, because eventually life places opportunities in front of you. And in that moment, your level of preparation becomes visible. Not your intentions, not your desires, your preparation. This is why the strongest people rarely appear rushed. Think about that. The strongest people are often surprisingly calm, not because they know exactly what's going to happen, because they've learned to trust themselves regardless of what happens. That is a profound distinction. Most people place their trust in outcomes. Why? Wise people place their trust in identity. Most people say, I'll be confident when things work out. Wise people say, I'll remain confident because I know who I am. Most people seek certainty from the future. Wise people create certainty from within. And that inner certainty changes everything, because now your emotional state no longer rises and falls with circumstances. Now your peace is not dependent on evidence. Now your faith is not dependent on signs. Now your commitment is not dependent on immediate results. Now you're operating from something deeper, something stronger, something far more sustainable. Let's move into one of the most important truths of this entire conversation. Many people assume patience is about waiting for reality to change, but often patience is about allowing yourself to change. Read that again, because it's one of the most important ideas you'll ever understand. Patience is not simply the space between effort and outcome. Patience is the space where transformation occurs. The version of you that started the journey is often not the version of you that completes it, and that's intentional. Because if you were already the person required for the next chapter, you would already be living it. Something inside you must evolve. Something inside you must expand. Something inside you must strengthen. And that process takes time, not because life is slow, because growth is sacred. Growth cannot be rushed. Wisdom cannot be rushed. Emotional maturity cannot be rushed. Character cannot be rushed, and neither can destiny. Now let's go even deeper. There is a hidden danger that appears during long periods of uncertainty. Comparison. Comparison is the thief of patience, because the moment you start measuring your timeline against someone else's timeline, trust begins to weaken. Suddenly, you're no longer focused on your path. You're focused on their progress, their success, their timing, their results. And the moment that happens, your attention becomes fragmented. Now you're not building, you're evaluating. You're not creating, you're comparing. And comparison creates pressure. Pressure creates frustration. Frustration creates doubt. Doubt creates inconsistency. Inconsistency delays results. This is why comparison is so destructive. It disconnects you from your own process. Remember this, you are not living their life. You are not carrying their lessons. You are not preparing for their future. You are preparing for yours. And your timeline belongs to your journey, not theirs. Now imagine what becomes possible when you fully accept that. Imagine no longer measuring yourself against other people. Imagine no longer needing proof that you're on the right path. Imagine no longer demanding constant reassurance from reality. What happens? Your energy stabilizes, your focus sharpens, your actions become cleaner. Now your effort is no longer diluted by doubt. Now your commitment becomes stronger. Now your patience becomes power, because patience is not weakness. Patience is controlled strength. Anyone can react emotionally. Patience requires mastery. Anyone can quit. Patience requires courage. Anyone can trust after seeing results. Patience requires trust before results arrive. And that's why patience is one of the rarest qualities in the modern world. Most people want speed, few develop endurance. Most people want certainty, few develop trust. Most people want outcomes, few embrace becoming. And yet becoming is where everything happens. Now let's enter the final and perhaps most important part of this conversation. One day the evidence will arrive. One day the breakthrough will happen. One day the door will open. One day the result will become visible. And when that day comes, something extraordinary will happen. You'll realize the outcome was never the most valuable thing you gained. You will look back at the person you used to be, the impatient version, the uncertain version, the reactive version, the fearful version, and you'll see how much you've changed. You'll realize that the greatest reward was not the success, it was the transformation. Because the success may improve your circumstances, but the transformation changes your life. The success may create opportunities, but the transformation creates capability. The success may be temporary, the transformation becomes permanent. And that's why invisible seasons matter so much, because invisible seasons create visible strength. Invisible seasons create visible wisdom. Invisible seasons create visible resilience. Invisible seasons create visible character. The world only sees the result, but you know the truth. You know what it took. You know the uncertainty. You know the waiting. You know the discipline. You know the faith. You know the countless moments where you could have quit but didn't. You know the days where nothing seemed to be happening. You know the nights where doubt tried to convince you to stop, and yet you continued. Not because you had proof, because you had trust, and that trust changed you. So if you're currently standing inside a season where evidence is scarce, if you're currently walking through a chapter where reality seems unusually quiet, if you're wondering whether anything is actually changing, Listen carefully. Do not confuse silence with failure. Do not confuse delay with denial. Do not confuse invisibility with absence. The roots are growing, the foundation is strengthening, the person is evolving, and often the greatest progress is occurring where your eyes cannot see. Keep showing up, keep building, keep trusting, keep moving. Not because you have proof, because you've chosen conviction, because you've chosen faith, because you've chosen to become someone who no longer needs immediate evidence to remain committed. That is real patience, not waiting, trusting when there are no signs, trusting when there is no applause, trusting when there is no reassurance, trusting when there is no evidence, because eventually what is invisible becomes visible. Eventually what is silent becomes undeniable. Eventually, what is hidden reveals itself. And when that moment arrives, you'll finally understand something profound. The process was never trying to test your patience. The process was building your strength. The process was building your faith. The process was building your wisdom. The process was building you. And that is why patience is not waiting. Patience is trusting without evidence. If you'd like to go deeper into this topic and understand the hidden principles that shape growth, transformation, faith, identity, and destiny, I invite you to explore my book, The Hidden Blueprint, Unlocking the Universal Principles That Shape Your Destiny. The book is now live worldwide because sometimes the greatest breakthrough in life is not discovering a new path, it's finally understanding why the path you're already on deserves your trust. Chapter 1. Why most people quit right before reality changes. There is a dangerous moment in every transformation, not when things become difficult, not when obstacles appear, not when people doubt you. The most dangerous moment arrives when absolutely nothing seems to be happening, because difficulty at least gives you something to fight. Silence gives you nothing. No feedback, no confirmation, no visible movement, no proof that your effort is producing results, just emptiness. And it is inside that emptiness where most people quit. Not because they are incapable, not because they lack talent, not because they were never meant to succeed. They quit because the human mind struggles to believe in what it cannot see. Think about it. If you planted a seed today and by tomorrow there was no tree, would you dig it up? Of course not. That would be irrational. Yet people do exactly that with their dreams. They start a business, nothing happens. They begin learning a skill, nothing happens. They start creating content, nothing happens. They begin transforming their health, nothing happens. And because they cannot see immediate results, they assume progress is absent. But progress and visibility are not the same thing. Read that again. Progress and visibility are not the same thing. One of the greatest misconceptions in human psychology is the belief that if growth is not visible, growth is not occurring. Reality does not work that way. Nature does not work that way. Life does not work that way. The most important developments are often invisible long before they become undeniable. Look at the construction of a skyscraper. For months, sometimes years, people see workers digging into the ground, excavating, pouring concrete, building foundations. From the outside, it looks unimpressive. In fact, some people might wonder if anything significant is happening at all. But the builders understand something the observers do not. The height of the structure will always be limited by the depth of the foundation. The greater the future weight, the deeper the current preparation. And perhaps that's exactly what's happening in your life. Perhaps the reason progress appears slow is because the foundation being built is enormous. Perhaps what feels like delay is actually preparation. Perhaps what feels like stagnation is actually construction. But because construction is happening beneath the surface, you misinterpret it as inactivity. Now let's talk about the bamboo tree. Because the bamboo tree teaches one of the most profound lessons about success, patience, and trust. When a bamboo seed is planted, something strange happens. For years, there appears to be no growth. Not weeks, not months, years. The person watering the seed sees almost nothing. Day after day, month after month, year after year. No evidence, no reward, no visible confirmation. Then suddenly, something extraordinary happens. The bamboo shoots upward, not inches, not a few feet, but sometimes dozens of feet within a remarkably short period. From the perspective of an observer, it looks sudden, almost miraculous. But was the growth sudden? Of course not. The growth was occurring the entire time. It was simply invisible. Roots were spreading, networks were forming, strength was being developed. The Visible growth was merely the final stage of a process that had been unfolding for years. And this is where people make a devastating mistake. They compare visible outcomes to invisible effort. They see someone's breakthrough. They don't see the years of preparation. They see success. They don't see development. They see results. They don't see roots. This creates impatience, and impatience creates quitting. Now let's go deeper into the psychology behind this. Your brain is designed to conserve energy. Thousands of years ago, survival depended on efficiency. Your brain constantly evaluates whether effort is producing reward. When rewards appear quickly, motivation increases. When rewards are delayed, motivation decreases. This is normal. This is biological. This is why so many people abandon goals prematurely. Not because they consciously choose failure, because their brain interprets delayed rewards as a warning signal. The brain says, this effort isn't working. This isn't producing results. This isn't worth the energy. And if you're not aware of what's happening, you'll believe it. You'll mistake a biological response for objective truth. You'll assume your brain is reporting reality. In reality, your brain is reporting uncertainty. Those are not the same thing. Uncertainty simply means, I don't know. Most people translate uncertainty into, it won't happen. And that translation destroys countless possibilities. Now think about how many people have stood exactly where you are standing right now. Authors, entrepreneurs, inventors, artists, visionaries, people who eventually transformed their lives. Every one of them encountered a period where there was no evidence, no proof, no visible movement. And in that moment, they faced the same decision you're facing: continue or quit. That's it. Those two choices determine more futures than talent ever will, because talent without endurance rarely wins. Intelligence without persistence rarely wins. Potential without commitment rarely wins. What often wins is simple: continuing when continuation no longer feels emotionally justified. That is where extraordinary outcomes begin separating themselves from ordinary outcomes. Not during inspiration, not during excitement, during silence. Let's talk about the illusion of sudden success. Most people are obsessed with overnight success stories. They see a creator explode in popularity, a company become successful, an athlete become famous, an author become recognized, and they assume the success happened quickly. But success rarely arrives the moment it begins. Success becomes visible the moment accumulation reaches a tipping point. There's a difference. Imagine a bucket being filled with water, drop by drop. At first, nothing appears impressive. 1 drop, 2 drops, 10 drops, 100 drops. Still nothing remarkable. But eventually the bucket overflows, and everyone notices the overflow. Nobody notices the thousands of drops that preceded it. Life works exactly the same way. Effort accumulates, skills accumulate, relationships accumulate, knowledge accumulates, discipline accumulates, character accumulates. Then eventually, something crosses a threshold, and reality begins responding differently. To outsiders, it appears sudden. To the person who lived it, it was years in the making. This is why quitting too early is so tragic, because many people stop during the accumulation phase. They stop before the threshold. They stop before the tipping point. They stop before the visible evidence arrives, and then they conclude, it wasn't meant to be. No, they simply left before reality had enough time to respond. Now let's examine something even deeper. What if the breakthrough itself is not the reward? What if the reward is who you've become by the time the breakthrough arrives? Think about that, because most people are obsessed with outcomes. But outcomes are temporary. The person you become remains. The discipline you develop remains. The resilience you develop remains. The wisdom you develop remains. The confidence you develop remains. Long after the result arrives, those qualities stay with you, which means the invisible season is not merely creating outcomes. It's creating identity, and identity is infinitely more valuable, because identity determines every future outcome you'll ever experience. Now here's something most people never realize. The closer you get to a breakthrough, the more likely you are to encounter resistance. Not less, more, because resistance often peaks before transformation. Think about a rocket leaving Earth. The greatest resistance occurs near the beginning. The force of gravity is strongest. The struggle is greatest. The energy required is enormous. enormous, but once the rocket breaks through the atmosphere, everything changes. Movement becomes easier. Momentum takes over. Yet many people quit while still inside the atmosphere. They mistake resistance for impossibility. They mistake friction for failure. They mistake difficulty for evidence that they should stop. When in reality, difficulty may be evidence that they're getting closer. Now let me ask you something. What if the thing you're waiting for is already moving toward you? What if opportunities are being organized beyond your awareness? What if connections are being formed that you cannot yet see? What if the future is unfolding in ways your current perspective cannot detect? Would you continue? Would you stay committed? Would you keep moving? Because that's what trust actually means. Trust means continuing when certainty is unavailable. Trust means remaining aligned when evidence is scarce. Trust means believing that invisible processes are still processes. And this is why most people quit right before reality changes. Not because reality wasn't changing, because reality was changing invisibly. They simply lacked the patience to remain present long enough to witness it. And that's the heartbreaking part. Many breakthroughs are abandoned just before they arrive. Many transformations are interrupted just before they emerge. Many dreams are surrendered just before momentum begins. Not because the process failed, because trust failed. And perhaps that's the lesson. The moment you feel like nothing is happening, the moment you feel like quitting, the moment you feel like your effort is disappearing into emptiness, may be the exact moment you need to continue. Not blindly, not recklessly, but faithfully. Chapter 2. The hidden cost of constantly looking for signs. There is a habit that destroys more faith than failure. A habit so common that most people don't even realize they're doing it. They wake up and check. They work and check. They wait and check. They pray and check. They manifest and check. They take action and check. Every day, every week, every month, looking for signs, looking for proof, looking for confirmation that something is happening. And at first, it seems harmless, reasonable even. After all, who doesn't want reassurance? Who doesn't want evidence that their effort is producing results? Who doesn't want confirmation that they're moving in the right direction? But beneath that behavior lies a hidden danger, because the moment you become dependent on signs, you stop developing trust. Think about that carefully. The moment you need constant evidence, you have already stopped trusting, because trust does not constantly check. Trust continues. Imagine planting a seed and digging it up every morning to see whether it's growing. How long would the seed survive? Not very long. Yet that's exactly what many people do with their goals, with their dreams, with their future. They keep digging into the process, looking for proof. And every time they do, they disturb the very thing they're trying to build. Now let's go deeper. Why do people become obsessed with signs? Because signs provide emotional relief. That's the real reason. A sign temporarily reduces uncertainty. A sign temporarily reduces fear. A sign temporarily quiets doubt. And the brain loves relief. The brain is constantly searching for certainty. It wants to know, am I on the right path? Is this working? Will this happen? And when certainty is unavailable, anxiety appears. So people begin searching, looking everywhere, searching for clues, searching for signals, searching for validation, searching for evidence. Not because they are patient, because they are uncomfortable. Now here's where things become dangerous. The search itself becomes an addiction, because every time you find a sign, you experience relief. And relief creates reinforcement. Now your mind learns, when I feel uncertain, go look for proof. So you do it again and again and again. Soon, you are no longer building your future. You are monitoring it. And there is a massive difference between those two things. Builders create. Observers evaluate. Builders move. Observers measure. Builders trust. Observers seek reassurance. And the more time you spend looking for signs, the less time you spend becoming the person capable of receiving the outcome. Now let's examine something deeper. The obsession with signs often reveals a hidden belief. The belief that reality must continuously prove itself to you. But life doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. Imagine a tree demanding evidence every day that spring is coming. Imagine the ocean demanding proof before creating the next wave. Imagine the sunrise refusing to appear until certainty is guaranteed. It sounds absurd, because nature understands something humans often forget. Processes unfold according to principles, not according to emotional demands. And your life is no different. The future unfolds through process, not constant confirmation. Now let's talk about manifestation, because this is where many people become trapped. They begin visualizing, affirming, taking action, holding a vision, then something happens. Nothing, at least nothing visible. And suddenly they start asking, where are the signs? Why isn't it here yet? Am I doing something wrong? Maybe I need another technique. Maybe I need another method. Maybe I need another teacher. And before long, they abandon the process entirely, not because it wasn't working, because they became addicted to reassurance. Now, understand this clearly. Manifestation is not strengthened by constantly checking. Manifestation is strengthened by alignment. Alignment means your thoughts, emotions, actions, and identity are moving in the same direction. Constant checking often does the opposite, because every time you check, you reinforce a hidden message. I don't believe it's happening. I don't trust the process. I need more evidence. And that emotional state becomes part of the signal you're sending. Now let's bring psychology into the conversation. Your brain contains a remarkable system known as the reticular activating system. The RAS acts like a filter. It determines what receives your attention. Whatever you repeatedly focus on becomes amplified. This is why people suddenly notice a certain car everywhere after deciding to buy one. The cars were always there. Attention changed. Now, imagine constantly focusing on the absence of results. Constantly asking, where is it? Why isn't it here? Why hasn't it happened? Your attention becomes trained to notice absence, and what you repeatedly notice begins shaping your emotional experience. Now you're not focusing on progress, you're focusing on lack. Not intentionally, but structurally. The mind becomes conditioned to search for what's missing, and the more it searches, the more absence it finds. Not because reality is against you, because your attention is being directed toward incompleteness. Now let's go deeper. There's another hidden cost nobody talks about. Constantly looking for signs steals your presence. It pulls you out of the current moment. Instead of being fully engaged in today's work, you're mentally living in tomorrow's outcome. Instead of building, you're evaluating. Instead of creating, you're calculating. Instead of becoming, you're measuring. And something profound gets lost. The present moment, the only place where transformation actually occurs. Think about that. Your future is not created in the future. Your future is created now. Every action, every decision, every habit, every choice, all of it happens in the present. Yet the person obsessed with signs is rarely present. Their attention is trapped somewhere ahead, always searching, always measuring, always waiting. And waiting is not the same thing as living. Now let's move into something spiritual. One of the deepest forms of faith is releasing the need to know, not because knowledge is bad, because attachment to certainty can become a prison. The ego craves control. It wants timelines, predictions, guarantees, schedules, outcomes, but life rarely offers those things. Instead, life offers invitations, invitations to trust, invitations to move forward, invitations to develop inner certainty without requiring external proof. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize surrender, not surrendering effort, not surrendering responsibility, surrendering attachment, attachment to timing, attachment to outcomes, attachment to constant reassurance. Because attachment creates tension, and tension creates resistance. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine taking action every day, doing the work, showing up consistently, building patiently, then releasing the need to monitor every result. What happens? Your energy changes, your nervous system relaxes, your attention sharpens, your focus returns. Now you're no longer chasing evidence, you're creating momentum. And momentum is far more valuable than reassurance, because reassurance feels good. Momentum changes lives. Now here's a truth that might surprise you. The people who achieve extraordinary things often stop looking for signs altogether. Not because they stop caring, because they become absorbed in the process. They're too busy building, too busy learning, too busy growing, too busy becoming. They don't need constant proof. The work itself becomes the proof. The commitment becomes the proof. The consistency becomes the proof. And that changes everything, because now confidence is no longer tied to outcomes. Confidence becomes tied to action, and action is always available. Outcomes are not. This creates a completely different relationship with reality. Now, you don't wake up asking, did it happen yet? You wake up asking, who am I becoming today? Now you don't measure success by immediate results. You measure success by alignment. Now you don't need constant validation from the outside world because you're developing certainty from within. And that is where true power begins. Not when reality finally gives you proof, but when proof is no longer required for commitment. Because the strongest faith is not faith after evidence. The strongest faith is faith before evidence. The strongest trust is not trust after confirmation. The strongest trust is trust without confirmation. And the strongest people are not those who constantly search for signs. They are those who continue building even when signs are nowhere to be found. Because eventually something remarkable happens. The signs you spent so much time searching for become your reality. And by the time they arrive, you'll realize something. The signs were never the point. The transformation was. The process was. The becoming was. And the moment you stop chasing proof, you finally become available for progress. Chapter 3. The universe cannot reveal the next chapter to the current version of you. One of the most frustrating questions people ask themselves is, if my future already exists, why can't I see it? Why can't I know when it will happen? Why can't I know how it will happen? Why can't I see the entire path before I begin? It's a reasonable question, but hidden inside that question is a dangerous assumption. The assumption that the current version of you is ready to understand the next chapter. And often, that's simply not true, because the universe cannot reveal the next chapter to the current version of you. Not because it is hiding it, not because it is punishing you, not because it wants to make life difficult, but because if you could fully see your future today, you would try to control it. And control would interfere with transformation. Think about that. If you knew exactly how everything would unfold, every challenge, every delay, every setback, every unexpected turn, every lesson, every person, every opportunity, you would spend your time trying to manipulate the process instead of allowing the process to transform you. You would focus on managing the outcome instead of becoming the person capable of receiving it. And that is why life unfolds gradually, not all at once, chapter by chapter, lesson by lesson, season by season, because revelation follows readiness, not desire. Read that again. Revelation follows readiness, not desire. Most people are ready to receive information. Very few are ready to receive responsibility. And the future often arrives carrying both. Now let's go deeper. Imagine handing a map of your entire future to your younger self. Not a few months ahead. Your entire future. Every success, every failure, every heartbreak, every breakthrough, every person who enters your life, every person who leaves, every opportunity, every challenge, everything. Would your younger self understand it? Probably not. In fact, many parts of that future would seem impossible. Some would seem terrifying. Some would seem unbelievable. Some would seem completely irrational. Why? Because understanding depends on identity. The same information looks different depending on who is observing it. A child sees differently than an adult. A beginner sees differently than a master. An insecure mind sees differently than a confident one. And the future you're asking to see may require a level of perception you haven't developed yet. This is why life often withholds clarity. Not because clarity doesn't exist, because your perspective is still evolving. Now think about a movie. Imagine watching only the first 15 minutes and demanding to know the ending. You would miss the entire purpose of the story, the character development, the struggles, the growth, the transformation, the plot twists, the lessons, the emotional depth, everything that makes the ending meaningful. Yet that's exactly how many people approach life. They want the ending immediately, without experiencing the journey that creates it. But the journey is the point. The transformation is the point. The becoming is the point. And life understands this even when we don't. Now let's talk about why uncertainty is actually a gift. Because most people see uncertainty as a problem. It isn't. Uncertainty is protection. Imagine if every future challenge were revealed to you today. Every setback, every obstacle, every difficult conversation, every season of waiting. How many people would abandon the journey before it even began? Most. Not because the future wasn't worth it, because the current version of them lacks the strength required to understand it. So life reveals only what you need for the next step, not the next 100 steps, just the next one. And that frustrates the ego, because the ego wants certainty. The ego wants guarantees. The ego wants complete control. But growth requires uncertainty. Growth requires trust. Growth requires movement without full visibility. This is why wisdom is often described as walking by faith rather than by sight, because sight is limited. Faith is expansive. Sight sees current circumstances. Faith sees future possibility. Sight sees obstacles. Faith sees purpose. Sight sees delay. Faith sees preparation, and the strongest people learn to balance both. Now let's go deeper into identity, because identity is the hidden force behind everything we're discussing. Most people believe they are waiting for circumstances to change, but often circumstances are waiting for identity to change. Think about that carefully. You may be asking, why hasn't my life changed yet? But a more powerful question might be, who am I still being? Because every reality has an identity attached to it. Every level of success, every level of abundance, every level of influence, every level of fulfillment. There is a version of you capable of sustaining it, and there is a version of you that isn't. Life is not simply delivering outcomes. It is preparing identities. Imagine pouring millions of dollars into the hands of someone who has never developed discipline. The money disappears. Imagine giving massive influence to someone who has never developed emotional control. The influence becomes destructive. Imagine giving extraordinary opportunity to someone who has never developed responsibility. The opportunity gets wasted. The outcome is not the issue. The identity is. And this is why transformation must come first. Because what you receive matters less than who receives it. Now here's a truth most people resist. The future you're asking for may require you to become someone you currently are not. Not a completely different person, a more expanded version, a wiser version, a stronger version, a more disciplined version, a more patient version, a more aligned version. And until that expansion occurs, certain doors remain closed, not because you're being denied, because you're being prepared. The difference is enormous. Denial says, you can't have it. Preparation says, not yet. And not yet is one of the most misunderstood phrases in life. People hear not yet and assume rejection, but often not yet is one of the greatest acts of grace, because receiving too early can be more damaging than receiving too late. Now let's talk about manifestation, because many people misunderstand why certain things take time. They assume manifestation is simply about wanting something strongly enough. It isn't. Manifestation is about alignment, and alignment takes time. Your thoughts must align, your emotions must align, your actions must align, your habits must align, your identity must align. And sometimes the universe isn't delaying the outcome, it's allowing alignment to occur. Because without alignment, the outcome cannot be sustained. This is why people often receive something they've wanted for years and suddenly realize they are finally ready for it. Not because the opportunity changed, because they changed. Now let's move into something even deeper. What if the future is not hidden from you? What if it's being revealed exactly as fast as you can handle it? Think about that. What if life isn't withholding information? What if life is delivering information in perfect proportion to your current level of growth? One lesson, then another. One challenge, then another. One breakthrough, then another. Not because life is slow, because growth is sequential. Just like school, you don't begin with advanced mathematics. You begin with fundamentals. You don't start with mastery. You start with basics. And life operates similarly. The next chapter is not hidden. It's earned. Not through suffering, not through struggle, through development, through readiness, through becoming. Now here's where everything changes. The moment you stop demanding to see the entire future, you become available for the present. And the present is where transformation happens. Not in next year, not in next month, not someday. Now, this moment, today's decisions, today's habits, today's alignment, today's growth, because the future is not created in the future. The future is created by who you become today. And the more fully you embrace today's process, the more naturally tomorrow reveals itself. Now imagine living from that perspective. No obsession with timelines, no constant need for certainty, no desperate search for answers, just trust, movement, growth, alignment, and an understanding that life reveals itself progressively, exactly as it should. Because the universe cannot reveal the next chapter to the current version of you. The next chapter belongs to the person you're becoming. And every day you stay committed. Every day you remain aligned. Every day you continue moving despite uncertainty. You are becoming that person, slowly, quietly, powerfully. And one day you'll look back and realize something remarkable. The future was never hidden from you. The future was hidden inside you, waiting for you to grow into it. Chapter 4. The day. Everything finally makes sense. There is a day that arrives in almost every meaningful journey. A day that cannot be predicted, cannot be scheduled, cannot be forced. A day that arrives quietly, unexpectedly, almost without warning. And when it arrives, something extraordinary happens. You stop asking why, because suddenly, everything makes sense. Not everything in life, not every mystery, not every unanswered question, but the journey, the delays, the setbacks, the waiting, the uncertainty. The moments that once felt confusing, the moments that once felt unfair, the moments that once felt unnecessary. Suddenly, they fit together, like pieces of a puzzle that never made sense individually, until you step back far enough to see the entire picture. And that's one of the great paradoxes of life. Life is lived forward, but understood backward. Think about your own life. How many experiences seemed meaningless when they happened? How many disappointments eventually became redirections? How many closed doors eventually protected you? How many delays eventually benefited you? How many setbacks eventually strengthened you? At the time, none of it made sense. At the time, all you saw was the obstacle, the frustration, the uncertainty, the pain. But now, looking backward, you can see the pattern. And that pattern reveals something profound. The process was never random. Now let's go deeper. One of the greatest sources of suffering is the belief that we should understand everything immediately. We want instant clarity, instant answers, instant explanations. But wisdom doesn't work that way. Wisdom is often delayed understanding. Wisdom is what emerges after experience has had enough time to reveal its meaning. And meaning often requires distance. Imagine standing 1 inch away from a massive painting. What do you see? Fragments, colors, shapes, random brushstrokes, nothing coherent, nothing meaningful. Now step back. Suddenly the image begins to appear. Step back further. Now the entire masterpiece becomes visible. The painting didn't change, your perspective did. And that's exactly what happens in life. Many experiences only make sense when viewed from a greater distance. The challenge is that while you're living through them, you don't have that distance. You're standing too close. You see only fragments, not the whole picture. Now think about all the things you once wanted desperately, the opportunities, the relationships, the outcomes, the situations you were convinced would make your life better. Some of them never happened. At the time, it felt devastating. At the time, you thought life was working against you. But years later, you often realize something remarkable. You are grateful they didn't happen, because now you can see what you couldn't see then. You can see consequences. You can see incompatibilities. You can see hidden dangers. You can see lessons. You can see wisdom. In other words, you can see the bigger picture. And that realization changes everything, because now you understand something most people never fully grasp. Not every delay is an obstacle. Some delays are protection. Not every closed door is rejection. Some closed doors are redirection. Not every unanswered prayer is denial. Some unanswered prayers are preparation. Now let's talk about trust, because trust becomes easier when you look backward. Think about all the things you survived, all the things you thought would break you, all the things you thought you would never recover from, and yet here you are, stronger, wiser, more resilient, more aware. The evidence already exists. You simply forgot to look at it, because the same life that carried you through previous uncertainty is carrying you through this uncertainty too. The same intelligence that guided you through previous chapters is guiding you through this chapter too. The same process that eventually revealed meaning before will reveal meaning again, but only if you stay long enough to see it. And that's where most people struggle. They want understanding before commitment, but life asks for commitment before understanding. Think about that, because that may be one of the most important truths you'll ever hear. Life rarely explains itself in advance. It reveals itself through experience, which means understanding often arrives after trust, not before. Now let's move into something deeper. There will come a day when you achieve something you've been pursuing for years. Maybe it's success, maybe it's peace, maybe it's financial freedom, maybe it's purpose, maybe it's a dream you've carried for a long time. And when it finally arrives, you'll experience a strange realization. The thing you wanted wasn't the greatest gift. Who you became while pursuing it was. The discipline, the patience, the resilience, the emotional stability, the faith, the wisdom, the character. Those things become far more valuable than the outcome itself, because outcomes eventually become normal. Human beings adapt quickly. The house becomes normal. The achievement becomes normal. The success becomes normal. The breakthrough becomes normal. But who you've become remains forever. That's why transformation matters more than acquisition. Because transformation changes the person, acquisition changes the circumstance, and circumstances can change again. Identity remains. Now imagine two people reaching the same destination. One arrives unchanged, the other arrives transformed. Who benefits more? Obviously the transformed person, because they've gained something permanent. And that's exactly what invisible seasons are doing. They're not just preparing outcomes, they're preparing people. They're preparing you. Now let's talk about something beautiful. One day you will tell your story, not necessarily on a stage, not necessarily in a book, but to someone, a friend, a family member, a stranger, someone struggling with their own uncertainty. And you'll find yourself saying something fascinating. You'll say, "At the time, I didn't understand. At the time, it didn't make sense. At the time, I wanted to quit. At the time, I thought nothing was happening." But then you'll smile because you'll know how the story ends. And because you know how the story ends, the difficult chapter no longer frightens you. You understand its purpose. You understand its role. You understand its contribution. And suddenly, the chapter you once hated becomes the chapter you're most grateful for. Why? Because it changed you. It developed you. It strengthened you. It prepared you. Without that chapter, you would not be who you are. Now here's a question. What if the chapter you're currently struggling through becomes the chapter you're most grateful for one day? What if the delay you're questioning right now becomes the source of future wisdom? What if the uncertainty you're resisting right now becomes the reason for future strength? What if the waiting is creating something extraordinary inside you? Would you view this season differently? Would you move differently? Would you trust differently? Because that possibility changes everything. Now let's enter the final truth. Most people think the goal is to reach a destination. It isn't. The real goal is integration, to become the kind of person who understands the lesson, who embodies the wisdom, who carries the transformation, who no longer needs external proof to trust internal truth. And that's when everything changes, because now life stops feeling like a series of disconnected events. Now life begins feeling like a perfectly woven story, a story where every chapter mattered, every lesson mattered, every delay mattered, every setback mattered, every challenge mattered, not because they were pleasant, because they were necessary for the person you were becoming. And that's the moment everything finally makes sense. Not because all questions disappear, but because trust becomes stronger than the need for answers. You stop demanding explanations. You stop fighting the process. You stop resisting uncertainty. And instead, you begin appreciating the intelligence hidden within it. Now you understand. The delay had a purpose. The silence had a purpose. The waiting had a purpose. The uncertainty had a purpose. The process had a purpose. And perhaps the greatest realization of all is this. The thing you thought was standing between you and your future was actually building the bridge to it. So keep going, keep trusting, keep becoming, because one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you'll stand on the other side of this chapter. You'll look back, you'll connect the dots, you'll see the pattern, and you'll finally understand why none of it happened any other way. Because the process wasn't delaying your destiny. The process was preparing you for it. And on that day, everything finally makes sense.